All right, I'm going to start calling on you people to sit down. Jason McEvers, go sit down. Dave Tomlinson, go sit down. Carl, go sit down. That's right, now the pressure's on. I don't know why the threat of calling people's names works so well, but it really does. It really is, yeah, I know. So let's see. Thanks everybody for coming to the January Solar Washington general meeting. This is quite a packed meeting, and it's going to be pretty busy, so we're going to have to stick pretty closely to our timeline, especially since we're starting our atypical 15 minutes late. So we have a number of speakers tonight. First up is going to be Jake Wade from PSE, and then Leslie Moynihan from Snowpud, and they're both going to be giving kind of an update for the year in review, how much solar has been installed, how effective it is and such. And then Phil Liu is going to be up here from WSU giving us a statewide kind of scale look at things. After that, we're going to have Carl Undershoots from iTech, kind of giving us an iTech update, letting us know what they're up to, how much they produce, perhaps, that sort of thing. And then Jeremy Smithson's going to give us the news from SIW, which probably also means, I imagine, a stakeholders meeting update. Is that about right, Jeremy? Yeah, okay. And then I'm going to go over the survey we just did. We just produced our results tonight. They're actually over there on that table, and so somebody will probably hand them out. But we did this big statewide survey of everybody in the industry, basically. It was an anonymous survey, and it covered stuff like pay data and income data and all that kind of stuff. And so we put it together into a single document that we're giving to state legislature and other folks who could use it. And so we're going to talk about kind of what it says and how we collected the data and take some questions. So now that we've started, and it looks like pretty much everybody is settled down, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Jake Wade from PSE. Yeah, I was going to say, there's Patrick. Okay.
Great. Well, good evening. Great pleasure to be here with you guys tonight. I see so many faces here that I recognize and know, and it's just a good time to kind of have a state of the program, and it's always a pleasure to be able to tell you what's going on over at PSE. So this is the background, you guys. Whoops. Let's see here. So just a little quick background here. Our service territory, we're all the rural areas around City Light and Snowpud and Tacoma Power. So we're the rural utility in the area. About 6,000 square miles, and there's about 2,700 of us at PSE. Oops. Looks like this turned off. Can you forward it for me? I'll just ask you to do that if you don't mind. Let's see here. Right on the laptop. This is where I do a little soft shoe for you guys. Okay. So again, wouldn't be a PSE presentation without inviting you guys all up to our wind farm at Wild Horse. You go up there and you really do get religion on big wind. So I'm, again, a big believer in big wind and solar. So I'd just say come on up and visit one of the 3 wind farms, but really the visitor center at Wild Horse is fantastic. Next slide. You should be able to just hit the thing. Okay, so taking a look at the numbers, this presentation, I'm just going to go through the slides very quickly. A lot of it could just be talking about the numbers. So this year we paid out $3.1 million on the state incentive. And so we passed that out to our customers. And we ended the year at 2,578 net meter customers and ended at 15.8 megawatt. So it was a pretty big jump over the previous year. So we added almost 700 new customers, and I was really pleased with that number because I get asked each year for our inventory. We can't just go to 7-Eleven and buy a meter, and so sometimes some of the meters we use take months to get into stock, and so I cannot be off on these numbers. So anyway, we're looking for a little over 1,000 new customers next year. So anyway, that's the numbers, and you can see the history starting at 170,000 paid out all the way up through 3.1 million. Next slide. Okay, and people want to know, well, what's the cap? How much is PSE eligible to pay out? So we'll get the new 2014 numbers probably in about 2-3 weeks. But last year, our electric taxable sales were just over $2 billion. And so when you look at what that's eligible to pay in the state incentive, it's just over 10 million, and we hit 3.1, so we're about 30% of the way there. Ooh, this is really kind of an eye chart, isn't it? Anyway, one of the other caps that people talk about, it's the how close are we to our net metering limit? Well, it's not really a limit, it's a threshold. And in the state law, it says that we must offer a certain amount of net metering for renewables and offer net metering, and our cap is 22.4 megawatts. Now, it took us over 10 years, gosh, almost 15 years, to get to the 11.2 and the last threshold, and then last year it got bumped up to 22.4. They doubled it. That was fantastic. Well, we'll probably hit 22.4 this year. We'll get there by the end of the year, 2015. So it should be part of the conversation. But I'm not so worried about that piece of it. For us, it'll be more circuit by circuit, and you can see here that we do monitor it each year in terms of where we stand on each individual circuit. Okay, next slide. You can definitely see the hockey stick here. Again, we ended the year at 2578, and I need to update that because there's a whole lot more red dots on the map, about 500 more actually. Okay, and we can go through the next one. Okay, looking at it county by county. Now, why does this number differ from the number I just gave you? Well, the previous number was December 31st. And it used to be that we'd go a couple days and the numbers would change. Well, now they're changing daily. And so since even the beginning of the year, the numbers are going up. Okay, next slide. Here you can see the breakout per capita. And so actually we have a growing number in King County. We have 829 systems there, the eastern part of the county. But per capita, Kittitas actually does better because there's so few people out there in our territory. And Whatcom just edged out Island County per capita. So Whatcom's now our second most active county. And Kitsap and Thurston there are neck and neck with each other. And looking at this, okay, what's the breakdown of customer generators? And that big giant orange piece right there, the yellow piece, is all our solar PV customers. We do have a smattering of micro hydro and wind and what we call hybrid systems, solar and wind combined. And that piece there, that sliver keeps getting smaller and smaller compared to the solar PV in our service territory. Looking at it broken down by number of systems, over 90% are residential. Looking at it by capacity, so this is by nameplate, DC nameplate of the solar going in and other technologies, it's still over 82% is residential, but there you can see that commercial and government tend to put in bigger systems by size, but not by number. Okay, this is the updated figures for the 2013-2014 production year. And you can see our territory is really made up of 3 areas. There is the section of the rain shadow behind the Olympics, and they do a little bit better than the rest of the Puget Sound Basin. So for us, Island County, Whatcom County, Skagit do over 1,000, whereas King, Kitsap, Pierce, Thurston do just under. But then right in the middle there is Kittitas County. And oh, they just do fantastic. I wish I could live over there and I'd put solar in over there. But we don't live there, we live on this side. So, but if we were to add the Kittitas numbers in with everything, it would take our total system average to 990. So just there's so many more on the west side that it doesn't bring up the average too much. So anyway, I think they'll post these probably on the Solar Washington website, and so you can look at these up there if you want. I did not have a chance to update the 2014 numbers into this, but this is just the month by month that we've shown historically. And so when somebody puts in solar in December, we just warn them that, okay, you're not going to get a whole lot this month, but it's going to start, we're already in that climb right up to the summer solstice. So the sun is coming. Next slide. Okay. Solar production, this is how our customers broke out into each category. And so you can see we do have a few dogs in the 500 to 600 range, but then it climbs right up to 900 to 1,000, 1,000 to 1,100, and 1,100 to 1,200. That's where, the top of the bell curve for most of Puget Sound. And then everything off to the right there, 1,300 and up, they're all over in Kittitas County. You can see here, this is the breakdown for us of system size. And the two left bars, the 0 to 1 kilowatt and then 1 to 2 kilowatt, that almost did not change at all this year. We had very few small systems come in the door. Now where it really took off was 2 and above, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can actually see it goes right up to 10 and actually goes up a little bit. And I think that has to do with inverters and then also the state state sales tax piece. And you can see that and then boom, drops off right there. And also, roof size. Okay, next slide. Okay, battery backup. About 87 of our customers have battery backup, 3.4% of our total producers. And last year they produced 774 kilowatt hours per kilowatt installed. So about 80% of a straight grid tie. Again, if that's the way you want to go, that's fantastic. We all want to be at your house during an outage. But you need to know what you'll get in terms of the state incentive out of it. Okay, next slide. Sorry, again, this looked fantastic on my laptop. Not so great here. We have 13 projects right now in terms under the community solar. And so if you have any questions about where we stand in terms of caps on that, just give me a holler. Okay. This is the breakdown for the last year. So kind of the large piece right there, that's 80% of the solar modules that got installed in our territory this last 12 months were iTech modules. That was followed up by Solar World, SunPower, Silicon Energy, and then the other 12 combined is that other sliver. So really, everything else is about 20% for us, and iTech was 80%. So, next slide. Okay, let's talk just really briefly about wind. The numbers here have not changed. Actually, they've gone down a little bit in terms of the amount of wind turbines in our territory. And they produced about 458 kilowatts per kilowatt installed. And just most of them going in, just not going in windy territory. So again, I'm a huge believer in big wind, but not at the customer level. So because they're just not putting them in the right spot. Okay. This is the bar chart for wind production. You can compare it to the solar production. It kills me when somebody puts one in and then calls us to interconnect. So, we like to advise just to make sure that you've got the wind. But, and I think even the Skagit bar might be a little high, actually. I need to investigate that system. But, that potentially is on the Strait of Juan de Fuca, so it's possible. It's possible. Okay. Looking at the production this last year, our customers produced themselves over 9.4 million kilowatt hours. That's what they produced. And I put up our standard picture of a 747 spinning, because that's the diameter of the blades at Wild Horse, or the equivalent of a 747. And I put that up there because it took over 10 years to have our customer generators eclipse or go over the production of one wind turbine at Wild Horse. But then it took 1 year to get to 2. And so it may not sound like that much, but it's moving quickly. So I'm looking forward to 3, 4, 5, 6. So it'll take off. It's all good. And then I also wanted to put up there that kilowatt amount, 9.4 million kilowatt hours produced in a year, that works out to a little over 8.1 million pounds of CO2 that did not go into the atmosphere. Because that's what if we had produced the power, that's what would have gone into the atmosphere. I'm really pleased with this number. This is PSC's turn time. So even though our numbers have been going up quite a bit, our number for the time it took, once we heard from you guys that The system passed inspection. We usually get the meter ordered up within 24 hours. Again, I just got to say it, if you do not hear from us that the meter has been ordered, it hasn't been ordered. So make sure you're watching that. Just a heads up on that one. But as soon as we order it, our meter journeymen are getting them in just over 4 days. So that's a good number for us. And that's not work days, that's just days. So next slide. Okay, just a few final numbers. The first one, 600. This summer, I'm putting my hand on my head right now. At one point, we had 600 stopped bills. We had 4 different issues going on with our new billing system. And it was just, I should put my blood pressure number up on there. Just horrible. We're down to 5. We're down to 5 stopped bills. They're all aggregated. And so we're getting there, though, and we have a whole IT team on it to get that fixed. 18, that is the number of people we left behind in the, this year's production payment. And it kills me to say that. So I guess you could flip that and say we had an over a 99% payment rate to our customers, but these 18 were people that we didn't get the DOR numbers, and we had to close the books and go on. So we'll be working on, we're already turning our attention to the 2015 production payment to make sure we hit 99% again, or higher. Let's see here, 46. 46, that's the number of people that have not cashed their checks yet, and to the tune of $48,000. So we're working on that and sending out notes to get people to please cash those checks. And we're working on ways to do an automatic transfer of funds so that we're not chasing this number. Because if people don't cash them, we still take it off our books, and the money gets sent to the state as lost property. And so we had to do that, I think, on 1 or 2 people last year. Let's see here, 413. So some of these numbers are good, some are not so good. The 413, that's the number of people that got affected in the April 30th true-up. There are people that had bank on April 30th, and they lost power. So they lost credit. It works out to 202 megawatt hours. Okay? So overall, when you look at the 9.1 that was produced, it's not that bad. It's about 2% of all power produced and got forfeited back to the utility. It's not fun for us. We don't want to go through that process. At the same time, though, this whole program is not meant for power producers on an annualized basis. So that's the whole battle we go through in terms of what's the right way to do this. But I think net metering, as it's currently set up, is a good plan where it does true up on an annualized basis. Of the 413, 216 right there lost 200 kilowatt hours or less. What that tells me is when I look at it, it's not that people had not burned up their bank, it's that they were starting to produce again for the year, and they lose it in April 30th. So really, as a state, we should be looking at a different system where give us flexibility to make it the best possible date for customers. Move it to their billing date the month before. That would get rid of half the people right like that, you know, in terms of losing any kind of bank. So that's just something to consider in the legislation. Let's see here, 3 and 3. What did I put those on here? 3. I know I put 3 on there because there are 3 pages in our new application. So we'd split our application into 2 forms, the standard one, our attachment B, and our easy form, which are for our 80%, you know, where most of our solar installers can use that for a single phase residential system that has no issues, no batteries, no nothing. That's the vast majority of them. It's a 2.5-page document, so please use that one. And 3, there are 3 of us that can now look at anything that comes into net metering at psc.com. So please use that to contact us, because that way it doesn't sit in any one person's mailbox. So anyway, next slide. Okay, for 2014, 2015, one of the things we worked on this year was we made some changes to aggregation. Aggregation, wow, it's a tough thing for us to do in our billing system. We're getting there. It's also a challenge in the fact that we used to have a rule where it had to be on the same property or contiguous properties. Well, we had in 3 or 4 just this last year alone where they had a garage or piece of property right across the street. Well, that didn't work. That didn't meet our rules. And so we made a change to it and got it approved by the UTC that they have to be inside the same billing cycle, meaning the same small geographic area. So it's not so stringent now that they can now cross the street. It makes it easier for us to manage aggregation. Our interconnection forms, we've been working on those to make those better. One of the other challenges this year was our accounts payable department made us gather up W-9 information for all our commercial customers so that we could pay them. But that's done for all those customers going forward. That'll be done. But we do need to gather those up for new customers. For 2015, like I said, we're already working on the production payment to make sure we have DOR numbers and everything in place ahead of time, which makes our lives difficult in the summertime. And the big push this year is do more for less, like I keep saying every year, more for less money, I should say, in that we want to make pushes to get off of our standalone database so that the whole company can see our solar customers. We have to get that into our billing system, and then we want to have online forms. And the billing problems we had this last summer really pushed these projects out, but that's absolutely on my to-do list for this coming year. And of course, Lord only knows what's going to come out of the legislature, and so I'm looking forward to working with all you guys in that piece. Next slide. Again, just the interconnection process. Talk to us early and often. We're getting a lot of applications in with their certificate of completion. Please get us those diagrams and documents in ahead of time so we can make sure that we're both ready to go and sign off on a system. Next slide. And again, I just wanted to highlight that we're seeing a lot of solar customers that are showing up on our rebate for electric vehicle chargers. And so it's a good group to make the pitch. Go to our website. We're giving $500 to customers that put in a level 2 charger for electric vehicles. This is a limited time only offer. We can do it up to 5,000 customers, and we're going to turn on the interval data metering for about half of those customers because we're flying blind right now in terms of what the impact will be for us for new electric vehicles coming into the territory. So we're just trying to get some more information on it. But it's a good way to offset almost the entire charge of putting in a level 2 charger for an electric vehicle. Next slide. And then this slide here, it's turned into an eye chart. All those red dashes right there, those are solar customers. This is what happens to our maps and records when a solar array gets put into place. All those little G's get put on our map so that somebody out in the field on their tablet can see a customer generator. And so it's just one of the challenges in that in this community right here alone, there's over, I think, 15 solar customers right there. And I'm not complaining about it. It's going to be a fun challenge for us to take on in the coming years. Okay, next slide. And again, just questions, comments, give me a holler. Zach Bates works in the group now, Rachel Brown, and again, send everything to netmetering@psc.com. I've just thrown a lot of numbers at you, and this will be on the website, and I love talking to you guys. Take care.
Next up is Leslie Moynihan. Jake did a really good job of ending that right on time. So I think what we're probably going to do is towards the end, I have a little bit of time to talk about our survey, but I'm going to cut my time a little bit short so we can have a Q&A at the end. So I think that might be the best way to approach this. So this is Leslie Moynihan.
All right, thanks. Okay, that was fabulous. And I think we organized things a little bit differently, but you'll see a lot of comparative notes. I'm Leslie Moynihan from Snohomish County PUD. PUD covers Snohomish County and Camino Island. I'm the solar program director. So I will get started. I don't have that final numbers fun page. That was excellent. I felt like it was a guessing game. All right. So solar at Snohomish PUD, many of you are aware, and Jake hates me following him or him following me because we have an added solar incentive program at PUD in addition to participating in the state incentives and having customers eligible for the federal tax credits and all of that. So we have our Solar Express program, and you can just skip to the next slide. So some of the numbers I'm going to talk about are specific to the Solar Express program, but basically Solar Express program is a subset of our customer renewables. So to participate in the Solar Express program, there are extra qualifications. We get extra insight into the projects going on through that program. Customers or projects not eligible for Solar Express still are able to apply for interconnection, net metering, and any state and federal incentives that they're eligible for. Many of you in this room are trade allies through our Solar Express program installers, and so I want to say to you that we haven't yet scheduled our annual meeting that usually occurs toward the beginning of each year, and so I'm going to use this as a little bit of an info session for you, and feel free to share this with your staff. The Solar Express program, we have just announced a change in our incentives. So it was $500 per kilowatt, up to $2,500 for residential customers and up to $10,000 for commercial customers. That incentive has been constant since the program launched in 2009. Obviously, the world around it has not been constant, so we've adjusted our incentive not to be negative towards solar, but to realign ourselves with what we feel is the right incentive for our program and to cover the same proportionate cost for customers and still promote solar to more for less. So our new incentive is $300 per kilowatt, up to $2,000 for residential customers and up to $8,000 for commercial. And still the requirements of our program have not changed, which are you must use a registered solar installer, you must have 75% total solar resource, and a few other requirements in there, but pre-approval is required. And that helps us so that we do see the interconnection application ahead of time instead of just getting it when the project's complete. So I think that's helped a lot of our customers not have to make too many change orders on the back end of projects. All right, so next slide. Other net metering, basically we have about 80% of our solar projects go through Solar Express program. That leaves 20% that interconnect and net meter outside of the program for any of the various reasons you see up here. And again, still take advantage of state incentive program. Our annual net metering limit increased in 2014 from about 3.7 to 3.56, something like that, to 7.3 megawatts. Next slide. So if you look year to year at our Solar Express program funding, this year we spent over $425,000 on rebates, cash rebates. We used to offer a low interest loan or a cash incentive. That dropped at the beginning of 2014, the loan, and again, for positive reasons. Back in 2009 when we started the program, financing was not very widely available, and now it is, and institutions that are much better financiers than a utility company are financing solar, so take advantage of PSCCU or Umpqua Bank or BECU or whoever it is, and then come to us and also capture a rebate, and it ends up being a lowest cost to the customers with a lot more flexibility for them as well. So this year, interestingly enough, we still spent almost as many dollars even though we didn't count it in terms of the loan size. So we did quite a bunch of projects more. Go to the next slide, please. Here's our look at our demand by number of projects. This was, again, Solar Express, so add about 20% to those numbers for our total new solar installations in 2014. Go ahead. And so here's where we are cumulatively. And I think this is really interesting. PSE is obviously a lot bigger, but our numbers are astoundingly similar in percentages. You added about 1/3 of your total capacity this year, and so did we. So we're at 3.7 megawatts in December, probably up to 3.8 now, and 1/3 of that was added this year. One of the cool things about the Solar Express program is that I get a little bit more insight into costs of projects as well as the specs that we're most often seeing. So from 2013 to 2014, not a huge change in some ways, and pretty big significant changes in others. More systems, of course, still highly residential focused. Average system size, though, for those residents increased by about a kilowatt, and it has been steadily increased by about a kilowatt a year for the past few years. And I think that has to do with the pricing first and efficiency second, roof space required. The average cost, we look at the cost, I look at the costs for both Washington-made and non-Washington-made systems, and by that I focus on the modules and toss out the differences of the inverters. The non-Washington-made system costs still lower, but that gap is closing fast. The $4.11 stayed constant, and I will say that's largely because I didn't have a lot of numbers this year. We had almost all Washington-made systems this year. But I did have a few, and the price points on the non-Washington systems really were similar to the year before. So the average costs we've seen this year for Washington-made systems went down from $585 a watt to $454 a watt, and that is the average over the full year. So of course, if you looked at the second half of the year, that would be even, on the lower side today. 97% of our systems that were installed this year used Washington-made modules. Next slide. Just another way to look at it, we're adding a customer generator every 2 days, and that's our map. So clearly spread out throughout the territory. Next slide. Production data. So I look at the production data twice. The first time is for the June 30th cutoff of the state production incentive program. So at that time we had 490 systems installed. They generated together just over 2 million kilowatt hours for that year of July 1st through June 30th. And when we say July 1st through June 30th, what we mean is energy that was metered and posted to an account during that time. And we do bi-monthly billing. So keep in mind that the kilowatt hours were actually not all generated between July 1st and June 30th. They could have been generated plus or minus 2-month windows. So unfortunately, it's really hard to compare the years by their weather because you don't know how many of these customers were billed in May or June or July. But anyway, as the program grows, obviously you just get an aggregate number that starts to kind of iron out all those kinks. So we paid out over $600,000 in the state production incentive, which is 23% of our annual limit. And then I'll do another slide that will speak more to that in a second. Then I look at the production numbers again on January 2nd for the full 2014. So for the full 2014, our customers generated just about 2.7 million kilowatt hours. And then that's where I can look at the average production. I don't have the same cool chart, but we're much smaller, so we don't have as much variation by geography. But our average annual production for all systems installed before December of 2013, so obviously I'm only looking at systems that have been installed for a full year, and average annual production was 966 kilowatt hours per kilowatt. And that's really not bad because we don't really have a rain shadow or a Kittitas. So 966 was, I was pretty impressed. The figure that I'm really proud of is that we had 988 kilowatt hours per kilowatt from our Solar Express systems. So, we do get customers that are upset that we're incentivizing based on total solar resource and what we consider best practices, but it shows in the results. Now, not to be unfair, there are more systems that are older that were prior to Solar Express, so that could also be part of the lower number outside of Solar Express. But even if you just zoom in on the years since Solar Express existed, the 2009 to today, we still see a gap, and that customers that are going with a registered installer that have a good site evaluation, they're getting more bang for their buck. All right, so the production incentive that we paid out, I have gotten quite a few questions about what are we going to do when we hit our limit and when will that be, and I cannot answer that for certain, obviously. Well, I can't answer the when will that be for certain, but I can show you that in July of 2013 we paid out about 12% of our annual limit. This year we paid out over 20% of our annual limit, and those numbers sound really small, but you see the exponential growth. You saw that 97% of the systems installed this year had Washington-made components. 54 cents a kilowatt hour gets you to the annual limit a lot faster than 15 cents a kilowatt hour, and more systems being installed every year. So my best guess with the number of systems we have installed now and our projected growth is that we will hit the limit at some point should things stay the way that they are. But it will probably be after June 30th of 2016. So if legislation changes the program this year, we probably won't face reducing our payments to all customers. But if things don't change, then we would at some point. But it's not going to be next year, next payout of incentives. So I think that's sort of the red line at the top is there is fluctuation in what your limit is based on your taxable sales. So I'm sure that June 30th of 2016 get us about 80%. That's, notice the light color means my guess is a little foggier. Crystal ball is not as clear, but that would put us into the 2017 is looking kind of scary for me if nothing changes. Okay, next slide. Other accomplishments. So the cool thing about our Solar Express program is what we're doing by offering a rebate is that we're basically pre-buying the RECs from our customers. So because we already have production meters on our customers' properties for the participation in the state program, if they want our Solar Express rebate, our incentive, then we get to claim the RECs from their really. This is our third year doing so, and we can actually double count RECs from small distributed resources towards our I-37 renewable energy portfolio targets. So this year we are looking at aggregating I haven't polished the numbers yet, but about 2,200 solar RECs, which we would count twice, so that would be counted as 4,400 kilowatt hours towards our I-937 target. And in addition to that, we funded 4 new Planet Power projects, which is our green pricing program where customers contribute to support local demonstration, lots of schools, nonprofit organizations, and those systems are getting bigger and more exciting and saving some of our community service customers quite a bit of money off their bills. I think that's it. Oh, yeah, one more slide. So goals for 2015 for me, for SNOPUD, kind of following PSE, we're looking at the numbers here and going, first of all, we now with our 700-ish customers that are customer generators, I can't possibly answer all their questions myself, so I'm looking to mainstream the customer service for solar customers within the PUD. And these aren't less customers or our solar program customers. They're our customers, and they happen to be generators. There are changes coming in addition to customer service coming. There's also changes coming that will affect existing customers. We are going to take the production.
Please mute your phones. Please mute your phone. There's a lot of noise coming from.
We are the only utility that I know of in the state that has been putting the credit on the bill as the customer earns it. So each meter read that has generation, they get their credit. They can't cash it out until they do their annual application in July, but they can use it to pay PUD bills. It's on their account already. And it is a terrible mess because if they don't fill out an application in July, we've already given them thousands of dollars of credit that we then have to reverse. Or if we hit our annual limit and we've already given them credit for 54 cents a kilowatt hour and we have to proportionally reduce everyone's credit, that would be a nightmare. We thought it was a nice thing to do for our customers rather than charging them for minimum charges and then giving them credit back every year. But it's just way more difficult than it ever should have been. So we are taking them off the bill. That's going to alarm a lot of customers that have been in this program for a couple of years because they're going to have their first bills to pay potentially in years. So customers that haven't looked at a PUD bill, haven't paid attention, they're going to have some charges on their bill next August if they don't leave credit from this year on their account rolling forward. Even if they net generate in the summer, they'll have minimum energy charges. They will no longer have a state incentive to pay that for them. So we will be doing our best to communicate with all of them so that they understand what's going on. I'm sure there will be issues with that. In addition to that, the whole Snohomish County PUD is moving toward monthly billing. I don't know exactly when it will be. We've been on bi-monthly billing. I don't know when it will be, but I do know that we are keeping in mind our solar customers when we do it. We don't have smart meters yet. We don't have automatic meter reading yet. So when we move to monthly billing, most customers are going to get an estimated meter read every other month. Solar customers will not. We have a commitment that we're just going to go out there and read meters every month, and we're probably going to put our existing solar customers on commercial meter reading routes because commercial customers do get read every month. So that should solve that problem. Hopefully I won't be here next year reporting numbers of how many customers had stopped billing, but who knows. All right, I think that is it, other than a glowing testimonial. All right.
Okay, this is a good trend. We're slightly ahead of schedule, which is excellent. So Phil Liu is up next. Phil's with WSU. He's going to give us similar numbers, but on a statewide scale. So here's Phil. Patrick, do you have his presentation?
Hello. Thank you for the invite. I'm going to be super brief here. I'm Phil Liu. I'm from WSU Energy Program, and we're based out of Olympia. Okay, let me give this a try here. All right. So anyway, so we're based in Olympia, and we're one of 3 entities that administer the cost recovery program. We provide support to the DOR and the utilities. So 2014 numbers. I'm kind of at a disadvantage here because the numbers that these folks before me, we come at the tail end of the process. So some of the things that we have are not current yet, but what we have so far is, it doesn't work. Please. So some of the numbers. Some of the numbers. All right, I'll tell you the number. 2,038. That's the number of applications that we processed last year, that we reviewed last year. And the next number? Yeah, so we reviewed this many applications last year. The next number, 1,682, that is the PV systems that were installed in 2014. So there's a discrepancy here. Not yet. Oh, did I do that? You did that. Okay. Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay. So the 2038 is calendar year, right? So the difference is systems that were installed in 2013 were still coming in. Because we're at the tail end of the reporting process. So it's either systems installed in 2013 or systems that were recertified. So ownership, new ownership, couples breaking up, homes being sold. So that 1682, how does that compare to previous years? So we are right here. And like I said, this is not current numbers. It's what we have so far. So I imagine it's going to be much higher. So this 1682 represents how much in capacity? Anybody care to guess? In megawatts? Last year we did 8.5. All right. We did 11.2 so far. So far. I expect that number to be going up. So how does it compare to previous years? So 11, 12, and 13. So 2014, so far, we have 92% residential and 8% commercial. The residential average size was 6.3 kW, and we had systems as small as 1,000 watts to 33,000 watts. In the commercial sector, the average size was 17.5 kW, and there were systems as small as 1.5 kW up to 104.5 kW. That's been reported in so far. So within the commercial sector for 2014, there were 8 community solar projects that were reported in. 8 community solar projects for 200 kW. There were 4 in Seattle, 1 in Bellingham, 1 in Walla Walla, 1 in Spokane, and 1 in Leavenworth. So this 11.2 megawatts were installed in, next please, 197 cities. 86% of them in the west side and 14% on the east side. That's east and west of the Cascades. So 197 cities, A to Z, Aberdeen to Zillah. I had to look up where Zillah was last year because I didn't know. The top 5 cities, Seattle, Bellingham, Bellevue, Olympia, and Vancouver. Most of it was in Seattle. Okay. And these systems were installed in 37 utility service territories. And of course, the top 5, we can guess. We don't have to guess. It's PSE, Seattle City Light, Snohomish PUD. Anyone want to guess the next 2? No? Pacific Power, Pacific Core, and then Clark County PUD. And next, please. And 87.1% by capacity. These systems were had Washington-made components. And in our database, there's 17 different kind of solar modules, 12 different kinds of inverters. You're probably reading that, right? And what else? The mix between string and microinverters, 75-25. 1% is about 1% is battery backed, and there were about 5 AC coupled systems. And these installations were put in by 72 installers on record. And I just put that up there. 2% of it was done by homeowners or do-it-yourselfers. And then the last number I have for you is 984 kW. That's how much solar projects were approved and granted by the Washington Department of Commerce in their energy efficiency and solar grants. So this was last year. It was done in 2 rounds, and the last one was just done a month ago. And something interesting that came across my desk was, next please. I didn't know there was a big solar carport in Spokane done recently. So I had my friend Bruce Gage skateboard over and take these pictures for me. Now this is on a senior housing facility. Okay, and then the next slide is for installers. We're coming up with new configured forms. We moved all the definitions and instructions to the next page, so it relieves a lot of clutter. But what's important here is under the technical information that there's manufacturer and model. And we do that because there's a Solectra inverter now that's made in the state. But there's also Solectra inverters on the open market. So we need to be pretty clear on that. So we have this one for residential and commercial, And then the next one is for community solar projects. Next slide, please. So 4 years ago, this was presented to you. So January 24th, 2011. This is what was in the program from 2005 to the end of 2010. So this afternoon, I updated this graph. So this is what we have right now. And of course, it's going to increase because not all of the installations done in 2014 are being reported yet. Next slide, please. So these are the numbers. What we did, what you did, what was installed, where they were installed, what was installed, and who installed it, and what $5 million got you. Okay, this is my contact info, comments, questions, suggestions, maybe a joke. Maybe a joke. Hey, so 3 nuns walk into a bar. The 4th one ducked. I could change that to 3 solar installers, but it's a different kind of bar. Last number, 920. That's the ferry I'm taking home. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Phil. And it looks like since we've all been, all the speakers have been on time or early, we actually have a little bit of time for questions. So it may be a good idea, Carl, if you want to hang on a second, to if you all have questions for Phil, Jake, or Leslie, now might be the time. Do you guys want to come back up? So we're going to pass around this microphone to those who have questions. There we go. So somebody raise their hand. There you go. And let me know who the question is for, and I'll hand them the mic.
Jake, if you hit your net metering cap, are you going to stop?
No. So that's more, we should be talking about it. It's a cap, but it's also a threshold. So I put the circuit map up there because we have, I think, a really good internal policy already agreed to for PSE that each year we monitor how much unstudied generation we have on each circuit. We'll compare it to our loads. And when we hit 10% of nameplate, at that point, we will actually stop and study. Well, we won't stop installs. We will stop internally with our planning department and protection department, and we will do a study to see what truly is the acceptable amount of solar on that circuit, which I would imagine will be higher, quite a bit higher. But we don't have those numbers on each. Each one is independent and individual, and we'll deal with them one by one as it comes up.
This question is for Leslie. That's more of just a thought I had. And I'm in no way being critical of the program at all because I think it's great and you guys are one of the few that are doing something, have been doing something. No offense, Jake, also doing a great job. A great presentation, by the way. I just wanted to comment on it's just a thought, I guess, on the way that the TSRF is done with the SNOPUD thing. And just a thought that, if you guys have already are going out there and kind of vetting that it's a good site anyway and calculating what that percentage is. To me, it would almost be a better setup, and it would actually help spread your resources more if you kind of added in what the AC nameplate is, and then base the incentive on that. That way, people who have a poor site, but maybe it's borderline, can still have the rebate, and arguably they're the ones that need it more anyway to help their payback to make it work. And then you'll also take those good systems and you'll get an AC name, like something that would be normally like the way that this is going to go into effect in 2015 will actually make it like a 6 kilowatt. So it's going to incentivize just a slightly larger systems on both the resi and the commercial side by like a kilowatt. But if you were to base it on AC nameplate, you would actually even spread that even more. And you'd also give the ability to people who have a borderline site to take advantage of the utility program and base it on production, which is what the utilities want to do is get green production on the grid. So just an idea, just a thought I had. You don't need to comment on it, but just wanted to throw it out there.
All right, thanks.
But I'll comment. Different from SNOPUD, but I don't know if you all caught it, that the UTC basically said when it comes to solar or inverter-based systems, we have to go off of the inverter rating. So at first I was a little bit unsure about that because I like consistency. I liked all generators based off the generator nameplate, but we do have to go off of the inverter.
Question for Jake. Thanks for calling out the connection between EV drivers and solar owners. So is it clear it's 5,000 rebates per year?
No, 5,000 total.
It looked like you already had over 5,000 on the chart, I thought.
No, I'm sorry, 5,000 eligible charger rebate candidates or applications. Yeah, so right now I think we're at about 150. So no, I'm just coming up on 200. So the program's just starting. And so we're looking to get those numbers up because we're looking forward to getting more people into the program.
Okay, I was confused by that slide. And run any numbers on what percentage of EV drivers have solar arrays, vice versa, done any joint outreach?
Of those, gosh, the 170 that I've looked at so far, I think it's somewhere between 5 and 10 have applied for the EV charger rebate. But we haven't done any outreach solely to the our solar customers yet, but we'll be planning to do that in 2015.
A question, I guess, for Jake again. I was a little bit surprised at the number for wind generation, and understanding that this is a biased crowd. I would still like to get your thoughts on the way you evaluate wind production. I mean, the number I wrote down worked out to approximately 8,000 kilowatt hours per day, which actually isn't a lot for a big, for a big turbine. It's not very very good utilization, and yet my understanding is they take quite a disproportionate amount of incentive money. I mean, I don't know, the last I saw was $1.10, $1.50 per kilowatt hour, and some of these big turbines won't generate enough electricity to pay back the energy investment in 20 years, let alone they're mostly a tax gimmick for Goldman Sachs, which is the largest owner of wind farms in the United States, because they get to depreciate over 5 years down to zero the entire investment, and then if they sell it on 5-year one day to Bank of America, then Bank of America depreciates the entire original investment down to zero in 5 years, offsetting all that profit. So, I mean, are they still, do you still think that they're something that PUD, that your organization wants to really incentivize or be associated with when the potential benefit to the Washington State residents seems to me to be so low compared to solar?
Okay, so I think we just want to make sure that we're not mixing two different categories here. So we have customer-owned wind generation and then utility scale. So when we're talking about the wind farms that PSE has bought and erected, those turbines operate, gosh, they're like 1.8 megawatt and over 2 megawatt turbines now. And they do actually operate at over 32 and 33% capacity factor. God, we get a hell of a lot of power out of Wild Horse, Hopkins Ridge, and State Line. A huge amount of power out of them. So I'm a huge believer in big wind, and I think it's just one of the many puzzle pieces in what we're going to need from a renewable standpoint. I believe in solar. I believe in wind. When it comes to our customer generation, we've seen customers that put them on too low of towers, and they maybe don't even have the right wind regime to begin with. So our major utility-owned farms are gigantic, and we've professionally sited them in windy territory. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm. Yep, and it's actually on our website, and you can go take a look at that, because we have production numbers for Wild Horse, for example, and man, it cranks it out. So I would invite you to go up and check out the visitor center. Pam?
Phil, how many solar installations do we have statewide? Do you have that number in your head altogether? From the you gave us this year's numbers, but I'm wondering.
Hello? Second to the last slide. The really tall one. Oh,
So what number is that?
6,000 something, I think. That'll be yeah. Oh wait, that's the back one. I think it's like 6,500 so far.
Okay, good.
Numbers
That's good. And would you explain when we talk about the cap? It gets confusing. For the production payout, is the cap a statewide cap or is it individual on the utilities?
Do you have any idea where we stand statewide in terms of the carve out for each utility and what is being paid out roughly? I know it's changing.
Drop me an email.
Okay.
I'll look it up for you guys. Right?
I think we're both about 30 the way there.
Yeah.
But there is no state. It kind of doesn't matter.
So right. Oh. Hi. So we have 42 utilities that are participating in the program, and we have not been tracking. It's not in our area to track what they are spending. But I guess I could contact them, and then if they would volunteer that information, I can pass that on. Yeah, sure. I know of 2 utilities that have reached it. Yeah.
I'll just speak for what I have been told from the Department of Revenue. I have not heard that there might be sharing across different caps. So I've been asked, that there are 2 utilities that have reached their caps, and why are those utilities reducing the payments to existing customers in the program? And the answer is that's in the state law, and that they have no other choice. And so we have advised our customers that if and when we do hit a cap, we do know that we will be reducing the payments proportionally for each customer that's in the program.
And that's a good segue into conversations about this year's legislation or legislative efforts. It's meant to address that.
Real quick, Phil, I just had a question on 2 questions. One is, when do you think we'll see the drafted forms for cost recovery? And 2, this is more of curiosity, which I'll probably email you on and follow up with. But just curious about if there's like a top 20 list or top 10 list of the largest systems in the state, where we're going, and also, I guess, on the same note, kind of commercial projects. You showed the percentage, but what's the total installed capacity of commercial?
Answer the first question. I hate to say no, I don't know, but I don't know. The second, top 20, you say? Well, I'll try from the top of my head right now. First one would be CenturyLink Field, 783. And then we got Finn Hill, is that right? 355. else we got there? Mason PUD number 3, I think 225. And PNNL 126. There's a couple of schools at 100. Help me out here, Josh. You guys just did 105 at the aquatic center. Wasn't that today was inauguration? There? Tomorrow. Oh, okay. But yeah, drop me an email. I'll make up a list for you guys. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And kind of a plea on the new form is to make it really clear for the release to the utilities. We had one heck of a time when the customers didn't give that release, so the state didn't send us a DOR number, and that's understandable. They can't do it.
Or it goes to somebody else.
Yeah, and so for us and for any office managers, or if you could pass on to your office managers, to make sure that that is always marked. It's so much easier when the state sends the DOR number to us directly, because we were really chasing some of those this fall.
Hello. I have a question for Jake and Leslie. Is that correct? When you're doing your projections to try to, calculate when this may or may not happen, what are you using as an inflationary number for the cost of energy over the next few years to try to see where those two curves will meet?
All right. For projections of growth in solar, I do not use any number for the cost of energy because that's not the driving factor in the adoption that we're seeing right now. We look at the cost of solar and how it's come down. We look at the changing incentives, the landscape of when federal tax credit's going to expire and all of that. The cost of electricity that's being offset is just not a driver in either the adoption or the number, because we're talking about hitting limits, and that's really the production incentive. So that has to do with the 54 cents, the 15 cents, and it doesn't have anything to do with the energy offset price. Now, that being said, customers come to us and they say, they want help getting a ballpark estimate of payback of solar. And so we use real numbers of what our systems are costing today, and we can look at that in terms of offset of electricity over 25 years. And actually, I don't use inflation, but a lot of our installers do when they develop pro formas, and I think anything in the 3-5% realm is perfectly reasonable and acceptable. A lot of you might have been following conversations about rate structures, and we don't know how rate structures will change over time, but it is possible that in the next few years the volumetric price per kilowatt hour could actually go down because more and more utilities are looking to rate structures that cover fixed charges with cover fixed costs with fixed charges. So therefore you might have a rate structure, for example, that has a fixed charge of $10 a month, but a lower kilowatt hour price than you had the previous year. Now, that isn't necessarily good for solar and for net metering, but for those reasons, I can't project out 25 years with an escalated rate.
I just had a little aside. Also, for larger projects, if you guys are considering bigger projects, come talk to us about that. Things over 100 kilowatt, because we have been in conversations with some folks to, if the site will consume most of the power, that we'll treat it like a hybrid net metering system. It'll come in under our large generator process, but you can use the power on site like net metering, and any excess that goes out would then get our PPA. But we're working on a fast track process for those.
Phil, I just want to, you said Century Field is the biggest, 783 kilowatts?
Yes.
And that is a Solyndra project, correct?
Yes.
Just everybody, I like to speak up for the underdog, and I think Solyndra catches a lot of crap because of what the funny changes that happened in the cost of silicon made that a product we could, wasn't viable. But that is a cylinder project. So when you hear cylinder dammed, I do want people to know we do have the largest system in the state is a cylinder project.
Yeah, there's 3 cylinder projects that I know of in the state. The second largest actually is Wild Horse 500. Sorry, Jake, I forgot. It's just what's in the program, right? Because so there's 36 megawatts in the program, but there's things that aren't included. So there's probably another 2.5 megawatts out there. And we don't know all the projects, so if you guys know, I would love to hear about it.
All right. Let's give a round of applause for our utility and WSU representatives. In the interest in staying on time, we're going to cut Q&A short and hand it over to Carl. Now, Patrick advised that I point out to you that we actually have this room till 9 o'clock. So we may be here later than you were expecting, but I just want to let you know.
Thank you for the invitation. I will try not to keep you here later than 9 o'clock. So we were here last year and asked to give a similar presentation about solar year in review. So I sort of did the same thing. I'll kind of give a year in review of what happened at iTech Energy. And some numbers to keep along the theme of the night, but also sort of other things we did at the during the year at iTech Energy. So go ahead. So this was my last slide last year. And I remember, I don't do this to brag FBC or numbers. I actually do this because the 12 megawatts I put up there, I felt like I was reaching. We had the argument when we were at work before I put up this slide and said I was arguing 8, 8.5, 9, and others were saying 12. And so we were going on, and so okay, we're going to go with 12. And I remember Jeremy coming up after me and saying, wow, you saw Carl put up 12, that's a lot. Well, go to the next slide. This is what we ended up doing. We ended up doing 12.3 megawatts at iTech Energy alone, built and sold into the state. So as Phil said, I think Phil's numbers are right on, but he's probably getting applications a little bit later. And the end of the year was really big. We ramped up quite a lot toward the end of the year. You can see that in the next slide. You'll see it better. But so to give you a little bit of an idea, we were 2.1 megawatts in our first full year of operation. Then we did 4 megawatts last year. And then this year alone, again, we did the 12.3, putting us just over that 18 megawatts. 18.4 megawatts total installed. So we were running little numbers this morning, and Nick said, well, that's about 23 football fields worth of solar panels, given that we started building 240-watt panels, and now we're building 270, 75, and 280-watt panels. So the surface area per watt has gone down, but it's quite a big area. It's about 83 miles or so if you lay them end to end. So we're almost be able to build a bike path from our factory in Bellingham to Seattle on our solar panels. That would be lengthwise. So go to the next slide, please. So here's month on month for the last, well, since inception. 2011 October is when we shipped our first panels. And you can see the production numbers bouncing around a little bit month to month. June, July, obviously, are big months for us. But if you take a look, right, 2014 January, last year, when we were here before, we were producing 2,000 modules a month. That's the number there. And we just slowly climbed 2,000, 2,500, 3,000. And then June, we hit almost 5,000 modules. Now, July was a bit of an anomaly, and Nick and I debated why this might have happened. But what happened in July is we started a second shift. In June, we were working 50-plus hours a week in the factory. We were working overtime because orders were just swamped. Or, we were being swamped. So we in July went back to 40 hours, trained a whole new shift, and then back in August, that second shift in the evening started. So in July, we were actually working fewer hours, and that's why we got that bump down. We also, there's a few, probably discrepancy in some of the numbers moving into one month to the other, but that's why we saw that drop. But you can see them jumping up again. October is always a good month for us. There's a lot of days in October. And then November gets dropped because we have Thanksgiving and other things that reduce the production. The green numbers are what we've already projected for the first quarter of 2015. So January sold out at 6,000 modules right now. February, we projecting above that, but we have maybe 2 weeks already sold in February. And then March, we have materials on order that we're actually going to start approaching 7,000. And I will talk toward the end, but if you go to the next slide. I'll talk toward the end about my forecast. So here's some more numbers that I wanted to throw out this year. We've been producing since 2011. We've never talked about how many panels we have coming back to us due to various reasons, various faults. We've built just over 70,000 modules since inception, shipped. Now we built a few that now we can't ship because they're not good enough to ship, but those aren't in these numbers. 19 of those have been returned to us for various reasons, and those listed below. So that's a 0.0271% return rate, which we feel pretty proud about. We'd like that to be 0, of course, but it's not quite yet. Those 19, or of those 19, we've had 9 that were physical defects, loose glass, or the primary one of those. And that happened because we ended up having not enough caulk in the frame. So that ended up being 5 of those. 4 of those were frame damage, and that actually was frame damage not from shipping, but we think we created when we were framing them, and then when they got the job site, all of you discovered that and said, hey, look, this isn't meeting the quality that we need from you, and we agreed. So we took them back, and that's part of that. Loose bus bar wires, we had 4 of those. That's actually in the junction box, and they were able to be repaired pretty easily and reshipped. Bad diodes, we had 3 of those. MC4 damage, we had only 1 of those, and we think one of those was just a poor connection. And then non-potting compound in one of the junction boxes. That's not a good one, but we've only had 1 of those. That was also repairable and was able to be shipped again. Next slide. So the other things that we've done in the last year was we've expanded floor space. Now the top slide's a little misleading because that neighbor building there isn't actually ours, but it looks cool. It's the one on the right that we're in, but we also are leasing more space in other buildings down the block and around the corner, and we have a total of, well, we had a total of 5 buildings at one point. We're down to 4 now, consolidated, but 40,000 square feet of space. Some of that's manufacturing, but the other half of it is actually for raw materials and finished goods, and some equipment that we're moving in and out. The other thing is, if you remember last year, we put 2 brand new tab and stringers in. Those are pictured right there. We just bought a 3rd one. 6 weeks, they take 10 weeks ago, and it's on the water right now coming from Japan, and it will mirror those 2, and it's going to sit right in the middle, right where RJ is. We just spread those apart. We're going to put the 3rd one in. That will allow our line to be balanced front to back. So that means the stringers will be producing enough strings to keep the layup machine going. The layup machine will produce enough strings to keep bussing going, and it'll keep enough strings to keep layup or the lamination going. So everything will be balanced. Right now, the stringers are the bottleneck. Next slide. The other thing we've done is we've grown our employment numbers quite a lot. So we started the year at 34 employees and 1 shift. In July, like I said, we started the 2nd shift, and we were 55 at that point. We now ended the year at 77 folks. We, along with this questionnaire that was sent out by Solar Washington, I probably want to amend our numbers, but our payroll this year was over $2.5 million in Whatcom County. We expect next year our payroll will be just over $3 million, which is a significant impact to the county. Next slide. So a little fun. I know I reported last time on some attention that we get from film crews and TV and so forth. It hasn't stopped. We still are getting attention. We got a Japanese film crew came in and shot some video at Bellingham and included us in that because they're doing this whole thing in Japan, public television, around sustainable communities. And Bellingham has been sort of called out in this sustainable communities thing for a while. So this film, I don't know if you recognize the name, Melanie Laurent. Anybody recognize the name? Yeah? So she's a lead actress in many films. The one I've seen more recently was Inglourious Bastards. She was the French lead actress in that. Next slide. So they came, there she is right there pointing, directing. She's the director of this new film Tomorrow, where she again is also trying to create a movie that shows the image of tomorrow, the new tomorrow, which is including solar. They went around Bellingham and shot video from all over what's going on in Bellingham sustainability. But it was pretty exciting for us. Next slide. You can see we're all pretty excited she's there. I didn't know who she was. I got the email actually, and so I'm worked with Sustainable Connections, and it was Derek Long that emailed me. He said, "Hey, we have this film crew. They want to be here." I said, "Okay, great. I think we'll try to squeeze them in." The word got out. I kind of stood up and said, "Oh, I think they're coming," and everything just shut down, and people were running around like, "Oh, she's here, she's here." So, yeah, we were pretty excited, I guess. Next slide. So the other thing we did this fall was that we were able to bring the Selectry inverters to market, and I would like to reiterate what Phil just said, which was there are Selectry inverters, just like the ones we're building, that you can buy on the open market anywhere else in North America. Ours are going to be different because they are going to be labeled on the side of them with the label that's built in iTech, has our address and everything else, and we've obviously that's clear with DOR. But to make sure you do the paperwork correctly, because DOR, WSU has very little way of knowing which ones are going to be out of state and which ones are going to be in state. I know all of you don't want to counterfeit DOR, but we want to make sure others don't. So we've done everything we can to make sure it's really clear that iTech built the ones that we built, and the serial numbers will indicate that. But I just want to make sure you do the paperwork right so that it's not ambiguous, you know, when they're looking at that. So these, what's that? So the question was, is there any chance we'll have the branding on the cut sheets? That's a good question. Yeah, we do. Yeah, that's a great question. I'll see if I can put iTech on the cut sheet so when homeowners are sitting down with it, they can actually see. Yeah, good point. I'll make sure we're doing that. Because what we have right now is just what Selectry has sent us, but we can make our own, so we'll do that. Part of the reason we went with Selectry, as many of you know, is because we've been working with LTEC. We still are selling LTEC, still have some of them available. But LTEC decided not to do arc fault, and Washington State is going to require that arc fault and rapid shutdown be part of all solar arrays by July 1st this year. And Selectry had this product coming out. It's also transformerless. It also had dual MPPT. The sizes fit more of what we needed as our panel power was going up from 240s to now, like I said, 280s. So this product actually fit our market, and I think the market in Washington State much better. And Selectry was excited to work with us, and I think we've got a great partnership. They're also working on a rapid shutdown product. We were just talking at the beginning of the meeting. It's a hard thing to try to do. It's going to be expensive. So this Selectry's got, I think, a pretty good solution, but it's going to add a lot of cost. We're working with them constantly. We've been working with them and others. I know Dean alone has been working for at least a year on trying to figure out how we're going to get this problem solved, and can we do it without an extra $1,500 or $2,000 per system. So that's something we have been working on. Next slide. The other thing that some folks maybe didn't notice, but we are shipping now with a coated glass. And we have not done this. We've kind of waited. Other large companies like SunPower have been using coated glass to increase, to decrease reflection and increase the transparency. But we've waited because the stuff we were looking at, we were testing, was actually scratching easily. But this product from DSM looked really quite good. And we did a lot of testing with it. It's very robust, and it gave us the ability to jump up a few more watts, so for the same cost. So it allows us to bring the cost down, and it's not that much more per sheet of glass. So we were able to deliver more watts per panel for the same cost to you all than we were before. Yes? So panel efficiency flash table, let's use a 270 because that's the one I know, is about 17.2. Unless that's changing, Dean? No? Yeah? Dana? I didn't ask Nick that question today. I know that's been coming up, so I don't know where we are actually post AR glass. I can't remember, but 17%. Our cell ranges are in the 20, 20.1, 20.2, and above. Yeah, so this is a great product. We're excited about this. This will actually allow us to get to those wattages around 290, 295 probably in this coming year. Next slide. Well, of course, we also announced just recently that we are opening a small facility in Minnesota. And we're doing that in partnership with a company that's already there. And for a couple of reasons. One, we didn't see the market to be particularly large, but they allowed us to come in and other companies come in and just frame. We're not doing a full manufacturing there. We're not tabbing and stringing like we do here. We're not laminating. We're not busing. All we're doing is building the laminates here, shipping the laminates to Minnesota, putting frames and junction boxes on there, and that's what the Department of Commerce there has now allowed for. I won't say that we were a proponent of that. We like the lamination and all that. That creates the 77 jobs manufacturing. This doesn't. But to start the market there, we think it's small. This is what they're doing. So we're starting to get in that market. We think in the next couple of years, if it grows to where it could be larger like here, then lamination may make sense in Minnesota. And it's a good spot to be in the middle of the country if we're looking at expanding into other markets. Next slide. So the other things we've been doing this year is some work in the community. The upper right slide there, we do quite a lot of tours with students, college students, some younger students. I know, Chris, you came in this year with a grade school, a homeschool group, and we want to try to bring primarily college students in, but also younger students, because they are going to be the future. If they choose to go into solar, whether it's in manufacturing, installation, or engineering, they're going to be the ones that push this, that continue to push this. I've only got a few more years left in me, so they're going to be the ones to do this. Because we're in this for the long run. I mean, this isn't going to be, I might do this another 20 or 30 years, but we need this farther beyond that. And they're going to be the ones that get excited about it. So that's why we keep bringing them in. And just had Ellensburg is going to brought a class in a month and a half ago, and they're going to bring another class in here in a few months. And so it's not just Western, not just the tech school, but also we're pulling from the east side. We also donated, when we upgraded our stringers and our laminators, we donated, those are our old Spire stringers there through the window at the Bellingham Technical College's section of what is called the Tech Center, or the TDC, Technology Development Center, which is a partnership between Western Washington University, Bellingham Tech College, and the Port of Bellingham. Port of Bellingham owns the building. They split it up in two sections, and they gave the Bellingham Tech one part of it, and Western the other part. And Western's doing material science and a lot of their vehicle research in that half, and Tech College was doing fish research in this portion, and then they moved that because they got a new building, and we're helping them get started with a advanced manufacturing degree. And we're hoping to do some R&D in there and do some small builds. So that was pretty exciting for us to be able to do, and that's the front of the building. And then Western just started Institute for Energy Studies, and we're trying to get more engaged with them and bring their students in, and even in the manufacturing side of that. So that's a policy degree. So it's an interesting partnership in Bellingham. We've got the tech engineering school and the policy degree going on all in the same place, and we find ourselves sort of happily in the middle. Next slide. So the other exciting thing, and I did call Jake on this one, I did let you know we're doing it, but we are working on a community solar project that's going to be about 50 kW. If you haven't been to Bellingham in a long time, that picture on the right is part of Georgia Pacific's old digestive pond. So it's a brownfield, circle of site. Across the way there, those kind of dark buildings is really the site where GP was. That's going to be Bellingham's downtown core in the next 10 years, they tell us. And the port had bought all this property for $1, all waterfront. And they found mercury and all kinds of stuff there. So it's taking them a while to clean it up. But good news is we're taking this section, so it's kind of the bank. This large building actually is the TDC building in the far corner. The green bank you see there, that algae, that's what this right-hand picture is. And we're going to put about 50 kilowatts on there. And Dana was just working on it this afternoon, trying to figure out how we can do it inexpensively, have our employees kind of engaged in this. Everybody's excited about being a part of it. And it will be entirely iTech Energy employee-owned. And everybody will get the benefit from it. So it was a great partnership between iTech the company and iTech the employees. So we're pretty excited about putting that together. Next slide. Oh, I was going to have more drum roll, but so here's what I think is going to happen next year. 24 megawatts in 2015. Now again, I think that's a reach. This number is generated with a little bit of thought. Right now we're building at 18.5 megawatt per year rate. We're ramping up to hit 20, 22. We're even looking at 25. So that number is not that far off. And I think given if we're in the 80% range, and let's say we get some more big projects, I know commercial, folks are getting more commercial projects, that we could actually see this number happen pretty darn easily. In fact, I didn't write it down, but I think we could see 30 megawatts. And that would consume, we're talking about the incentives and the caps that the utilities have per utility, and if we're sitting at 1/3 right now, and if we're using 54 cents for the next 80% of that goes in, if we do another 20, I think we're hitting those caps a little bit sooner than what Leslie put out there. But I think you're right on. It's going to be 2016 sometime. So who knows when, but yeah, it's going to be going fast this year. And I think if the legislation gets changed, which I do hope it does, and I hope we all can work together and do that because I think it's important, it's going to speed it up even more. Because whatever it gets changed to, the ROI likely will be a little bit longer, and it's going to be exciting, exciting fall. So I'll leave it at that. Do you want to take questions now, or do you want to? Yep. Yeah. Any questions? Yes, to the green.
Yeah, federal tax due to expire in 2016. Do you think there'll be a mad rush?
So
to get everything for installation before the end of 2016.
Yeah, so the question was, federal tax credits expire in 2016. That's at the end of 2016. Will there be a mad rush? Yes, I think there will be. I think there'll, yes. I don't know other way to say that. That's why I think, so we're going to do, if we do 20 megawatts next year in the state, let's say even 2025, 2016, depending on what gets passed, that's going to determine a lot of what happens in 2016. But 2016 will have that driver of the sunset, and given what happened in the last election and who's sitting in office now in D.C., it's hard for me to believe that that's going to get renewed, but you never know.
You seem to be generating some excitement among the populace up there for solar. Yeah. I'm just wondering if that's have an impact on like the Gateway Pacific terminal attitudes and the political attitudes towards the development of oil coal trains and so forth.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Yeah, I mean, Bellingham is definitely an interesting split. I mean, Bellingham as a city is very liberal, of course, but as soon as you go out in the county, it's not. It's quite conservative, and so Whatcom County is this dynamic split where we have both of those things going on. So I think it is. There's a couple of things happening. One, we're working very, very hard to show that you can grow a successful company, you can do it quickly, you can provide a lot of jobs with solar. And we can do it, not yet, but in the next 18 months, you can do it and compete outside of the state, you compete in the North American market. So that's really what we're driving at. We're trying to show that as an alternative to carbon-based energies. So that's how we're coming about. We're trying to work it on the positive side and say, look, we can do this and we can have a huge industry here in Whatcom County that provides a lot of money and a lot of resources.
Could you give us some insights in terms of your market? How much of it is in Washington, and then where are your other major centers that are buying your product?
Our market right now is almost exclusively Washington. And we have 1 or 2 projects in Oregon, and I think that's about it. And there's one in Idaho. Yeah, it's Touchstone or Solarstone. Solarstone, I don't know if they've actually done the projects in Idaho. They're in Idaho, but I think they've done them in Spokane. But yes, it's because of the incentive and the 54 cents that it makes it really work well. And we've seen that as the opportunity to get ready. So we have a year, we think a year and a half, before we really need to have our prices and our volumes to the point where we can go out and play in the North American market. And what's interesting is, as we've gotten bigger, the market started to get bigger. People are interested in Washington State now. With this kind of number, I mean, 24 megawatts still isn't that big, but we have a really big player just across the Columbia River to the south of us, Solar World, if you didn't know. And they were not interested at those earlier numbers, that Phil put up those earlier numbers of, a couple megawatts here, a couple megawatts there. They don't care. 24, 50, 100 megawatts, now people start to look. And we have people that we've partnered with, they're saying, look, North America is going to be the next place that money's going to go. I don't know if you saw, there's an article out this week showing that the fastest growing industry in North America right now is solar. Yes, that's it. Thank you. Yep, MSN Money for those on the
You've mostly anticipated my question, which is great. Good clairvoyance. I was basically going to ask when the transition you see might be occurring to a more, competitive with panel prices that are, in the 30, 50 panel range of 80 cents a watt. And obviously, as you're ramping up, that, that's not realistic, but you have the 54-cent incentive. But it sounds like you do have a path for trying to transition to where you are becoming closer to being competitive with a larger universe of suppliers.
Yeah, I mean that was the goal from day one, and that was one of the major reasons that John decided to build a 60-cell panel, was that that's a panel that is recognizable and it can be sold, and it's something that we knew we could get what we call the BOM, the bill of materials. We can put that together and we can try to find that from very high quality sources around the world, because that's where they are. That's all over the world now. Europe is huge, and China and Japan are growing far more rapidly than we are. And so can we build enough volume here that we start to attract manufacturing back to North America to the degree that we can compete? So that's been the goal. And we're on our way. It's a daily conversation. Jesse was just in my office today laying down our bill of material numbers and saying, look, we're getting much closer than we were just a few months ago. So yes, that is definitely on our radar. The hard part is the throughput volume of the bill of materials for pricing. That's been a big thing. We're getting that under control. Now we have to try to get the efficiency, hit those 24 megawatt numbers, and try to do it with the same cost, basically, so we can cut those prices almost in half. Yes, up front.
Yeah, my question was, when I tried to buy stock in a solar company, I couldn't find any in Washington that was selling stock, and I ended up having to buy stock in solar companies more on the east side of the country. Do you see yourself in trying to grow to sell stock like other growth businesses?
That's a great question. I would say my first guess would be not immediately. No. The company was started by John Flanagan. He bootstrapped the whole thing. Kelly Sampson is also an investor, part investor. It was friends and family funded from the beginning. He went to his brother, he went to his family, and that's how it started, and that's how it remains. I would think that if we're going to make the next big jump, it's going to be a partnership, but I don't know if we're going to have public stock options. I would say that's probably ways down the road. It's not in the vision right now. That was it.
All right. Thank you very much, Carl, for the presentation. So next up is Jeremy Smithson. Puget Sound Solar are going to give us an update on SIW and what they're up to. And then I'm going to give you a brief rundown of our survey, and that'll be it for the night.
Thanks, Dave. I've only got a few slides this time, so we'll have plenty of time for questions. I'm sure you'll have some. So I spent all my time making this awesome slide that has a highway coming through. That doesn't really exist, but it looks cool. Next slide. So we started off the year on kind of a nice note. The DOR concluded their 2013 rulemaking on whether or not leased projects could access the state incentive, and they said no, and it was official on January 7th. And then the final draft came out around the 15th. Next slide. So a nice way to start the year, just making sure everything is, the laws are being complied with. Okay. So shortly after that, our organization participated in lobby days down in Olympia. About 40 of us went down and kind of shook things up on the Hill there for a minute. We've got, I'm not sure how many members we have at this point, but our membership is pretty broad. We're really solar installers, but we also have associate members that are manufacturers and lenders, et cetera, supply houses, and anybody else that wants to contribute and be an associate member, that would be great. But really the core of our group are the installers. And here's the group that was down there January 16th last year. Go ahead, next slide. We met with Jeff Morris, who explained his labyrinth of bill ideas and things. And we met with our individual, everybody met with the legislators that are in their district, and it was a good day. Next slide. So why are we doing that? Because we want to produce our own bill to extend the incentives that we have. It's been a very successful program. It's attracted a lot of attention just because of the big numbers, 54 cents a kilowatt hour, and you know, the fact that it's being done in Washington, which is, you know, always been the dark, dank corner of the solar universe in the U.S. But this is our primary objective coming into the year. Now, when this organization came together, we were really focused on that DOR process and also a UTC process that was happening in 2013. But our objective going into 2014 was to hit the ground running in 2015. We organized in 2013 and just really kind of were swept up in the process in the legislature last year. We did you know, work in that process and kind of established ourselves. But this year we started really early on in January to get things going. We've had about well, I'll tell you, the working core of this group, Dave Cousin from A&R Solar, Lana Nelson, excuse me, from Fire Mountain Solar, Laura Christian with Whidbey Sun and Wind, Deborah Cooney with South Sound Solar, and Howard Lamb with Sunergy Systems. Together with myself, we're the board, and we just did all the work. So my hat is off to those folks that are on the board. It's really a good group, lots of brain power and experience in different areas, so it's worked out quite well, I think. And we've had over 100 meetings this year or last year, board meetings with legislators, conference calls with our lobbyists, meetings with utilities, and also in the couple of other processes that got going. So next slide. Oh, that's a meeting. Okay, next slide. So obviously we want, you know, to end up this effort with a bill that gets through the process, and that's you know, that's a big iffy proposition for the most part, but we think it can be done. That's, you know, we're optimists, I think. Go ahead. We don't want this to happen. And for all you conspiracy theorists out there, yes, they do hate us. Okay, next. So there were 4 processes really that, you know, that I'm looking at here tonight that are likely to produce bills in the session coming up. Governor's climate agenda, of course, which started last year with, well, I'm sorry, in 2013 with the climate legislative and executive work group. Right in their proposed plan was what we thought was a pretty aggressive 375 megawatts of solar. And internally in our company, in Puget Sound Solar, we looked at that. We said, well, could we actually do our part of that? I mean, is it possible to do that within the time period allotted? And it was true. We could. And I think we had some discussions with Carl, you know, about capacity and growth and that sort of thing. And it really looked like, you know, that was doable, 375 megawatts. So that's a nice benchmark there. Solar installers of Washington, we're going to produce a bill. We're looking for a sponsor. We got some good prospects. The electric utilities are looking at dealing with the various situations that they're in regarding net metering. One thing that we've learned in all the meetings that we've been in with a lot of them with our utility friends is that you know, we have a lot of utilities in this state, and they're all in different situations. So there's some flexibility that's being looked for there, and you may see a bill produced to that end. And then there's Representative Jeff Morris, who has ideas. He has bills from the previous two sessions that he's talking about reintroducing. We don't know what's going to come out of Jeff Morris's process, but he did have meetings, and he does have ideas. So we'll see. He is the chair of the Energy Committee in the House, and in terms of our process, that's the first stop, or it would be the Energy Committee. Well, actually, it's the Technology and Economic Development Committee in the House, but that's where the energy issues that we're talking about would be dealt with. And then there is the Energy Committee in the Senate, which is chaired by Senator Doug Erickson, in whose district ITEC is located, as well as the oil refineries in Ferndale. So it's going to be a tough challenge to get through the Republican Senate, but you know, we're prepared. And part of our preparation actually is going to be referred to by Dave after I'm done here, and that is the real economic benefit to the state that we can see from the solar industries. So let me just talk briefly about the bill that we're proposing. The working title is the New Solar Production Incentive Program. Not very imaginative, but I think we were all kind of brain dead in that meeting, and we couldn't really come up with anything snazzy. We kind of thought, well, maybe we should have some clever acronym or something, but we moved on. The objectives, though, we're pretty serious. We want to create a more sustainable incentive program. The one that we have, excellent up till now, was created in a very different climate. Not so much on the, if you look at the legislature, it was not so very different. There was a Republican Senate in 2005. The House was Democratic. We had a Democratic governor. And the incentive program we have now passed unanimously in both houses, and the governor really wanted it. There was a surplus in the budget, and there was a rainy day fund, I believe. So, you know, the economic situation was different. The economy was flying high. Now here we are, the economy's geared up again. But the state budget is still looking at a tremendous hole due to the mandate for funding education. So we are looking at the reality that we have to create a more sustainable program, and to help with that, the cost of doing solar is quite a bit different than it was in 2005, and that's something that we kind of we talked about $1 a watt modules and stuff, but didn't really believe it in 2005. So here we are, at 60 cents or whatever, if you really want to go for the cheap stuff. And that has changed the picture, and has given us some flexibility in terms of what we can do to reduce the cost to the state and yet create a program that is smoother and still attracts participants. So we want to increase the cost effectiveness of the state. We want to enlarge the circle of participants. We'd like to see more commercial projects. We'd like to see more true community solar projects. We'd like to see, more people be able to do solar. And we're also looking at improving our integration with our utilities because, and I think Jake's study that will be coming of a circuit, that's going to be very interesting. So that kind of interchange, when we get information back from our utility partners about how this is working and where we should be going. This is a conversation that that has really kicked up this year, I think, and or in the last year. And this year, we're just going to continue that. There's a place for everybody in this room in this process, because when we get to the legislative session that starts next Monday, we're going to be off and running, and we'll be looking for your support. It can be very simple. You just contact your representatives and your state senator and tell them that you support more solar in Washington, and that the state has been very effective at supporting that up to now, and you'd like to see that continued. Simple message, but our legislators need to hear from their constituents, and the more constituents they hear from, the more likely it is that something good can happen. So last slide. So yeah, it'd be great if you can get involved. We will be communicating things. We're working with Solar Washington in that regard as far as communicating things. The survey that Dave Nichols is going to introduce is a collaborative effort, and we hope to see more of those kind of efforts in the coming year. We have a webpage, solarinstallersofwashington.org or solarinstallersofwa.org, but really more current information is on our Facebook page. So if you want to get little tidbits of what's happening, just go to Solar Installers of Washington on Facebook. And that's what I've got. Are there any questions? Chris Herman.
So do you think Jeff Morris is going to let something through his committee that isn't his bill?
Well, it's happened before. So, you know, and you know, we appreciate Jeff for the fact that he is a person in the legislature who is a resource for other legislators. Our lobbyist, Brad Boswell, likes to reiterate to us that there aren't too many of our elected officials who know very much about solar. And so we hope to work with Jeff and his committee. One of those processes, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. One of those processes is the governor's climate agenda. That was so far has been a very robust process. In the governor's executive order 14-04, he fingered WSU as the organization that would pull together a group including the Department of Commerce, the UTC, installers, manufacturers, other stakeholders to create an incentive program that would take over for the one that we have now. And Representative Jake Fye from Tacoma, who also is with WSU, has been organizing that. And it was actually a very good process, very well organized. And the resulting bill that will be coming out of that is, while we think it's a little on the conservative side, it's going to create a great foil for us to be a little bit more radical. So yeah, two good processes there. And Jake Fye is also on the Technology and Economic Development Committee, and he did get a bill through last year, so or last session, and so we'll see. Representative Carlisle is somebody that I think we need to win over a bit, and this is where the constituents come in. He's you know, he's a Democrat, but he's got a fiscal conservative edge to him. He's really looking at his pay-as-you-go type of program, where if you want to come to the legislature and propose that the state spend money on something, you also have to have some way that the state's going to raise the money for that thing. And Representative Carlisle is going to prove to be a challenge for us, I believe. But at the same time, he's in the 36th district, which is the most radical, left-leaning district in the state. So we'll see. It's going to be good engaging him with our arguments, and some of that is going to be out of the survey that you're going to hear about in a couple of minutes.
A couple of other things as we've had these meetings. I do want to encourage everybody, if you have a company, like Jeremy said, there's associate members, join us, the Solar Installers of Washington. We've hired a lobbyist this year. We're hoping to do even more than that in terms of organizational, so we would really love your support. And he talked about the board that's been fantastic, but also the membership who's been contributing to the ideas that we have in terms of the new bill. And boy, does Jeff Morris love us for organizing ourselves. And the other legislators that we've talked to just really appreciate that we come with an organized voice. And again, your membership makes us stronger. Your voice makes us stronger. They love it and we just look more powerful because as a group. So when we all went for Lobby Day last year, they were all kind of blown out of the just what we had. I mean, with over 40 people there, it was really fabulous. So that's really, really important. And we went to Climate Solutions meeting last night. We are totally on the agenda for the Environmental Committee this year for the first time. Solar's always been kind of the stepchild to other ideas they had for what was needed. But thank you to NWSEED's participation as well. Jaime's in the audience tonight. I know I saw him, and he's really helped us, and Johnny also with the Northwest Energy Coalition and the solutions people. All those other lobbyists, all those environmental groups are going to be on the same, or close to the same page as us. So that's exciting this year. But again, that's why we need you, and that was the emphasis last night, is all of those of, no matter where you live, you've got a representative, they need to hear from you. And you don't need to be a specialist in this. You don't need to know all the details, but just to know that solar is making a difference, especially when it comes to job and economic growth. So it really, really is important you participate.
One thing I just thought of before I'm done here is that our agenda for 2015 also includes more than just legislation. Bill Hoffer has stepped up to head up a committee dealing with building codes, and so we've got other things. We got building codes, we got fire codes that Jeff Randall was dealing with last year, and there are other things that we're looking at doing. Hopefully, with a little more help.
Is it possible that you could put together something, a short message you were talking about sending to our local representatives and such? Could you guys maybe put together just a simple message that we could send out in mass emails to, sponsors and members of Solar Washington, but also that installers could maybe send out to the homeowners that have had systems installed that they can get involved as well?
Yes, we will be producing a, kind of like 5 bullet point summary thing that you can use. It's really, once the session gets going, everybody's really busy down there in Olympia, so it's kind of important to be brief and to the point, and so we will have such a document available, and we'll be disseminating that. Thanks.
How about solar hot water incentives? I think photovoltaics gets a lot more interest than solar hot water, but is there any new legislation looking at solar hot water incentives?
There's nothing on the agenda that I know of. I mean, we did get the sales tax waiver restored for solar hot water a couple of years ago, which was great. Solar hot water has really just kind of not been as cost effective since about 2010, or 2009. And now there are even other ways to make hot water other than just directly collecting the sun's energy. You can, put up 3 or 4 PV modules and use a heat pump water heater. But there is no more efficient use of roof space still than a solar hot water collector. So it's still a very effective method of using solar energy. We don't see anything on the agenda now, but the question was raised in one of the meetings we were in, so we'll see.
So you gave a really great outline of the process and the logistics you've been going through to create this bill. I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of the details of the proposed bill and the structure and what you're proposing that it does?
That'll be forthcoming. We are actually, the bill is being drafted into bill language. Right now it's been sent to the code revisor's office. So that's something that we'll be announcing. Pardon? Well, how much time have you got? So here's the idea, and this is, I'll just give you the elevator speech. The current program has everybody's incentive ending on the same date, June 30, 2020. The new program would give every participant a 10-year term. So everybody gets the incentive for 10 years. However, that rate will drop each year for the next group of participants that come into the program. Everybody gets 10 years, but at a lower rate if they start participating in the program the next year, and so forth. That's one big difference between what we have now. The incentive for made in Washington products will be lower. The incentive in our bill, the incentive for out-of-state products will be at least where it is or higher. We're proposing a higher one. We want that gap to shrink. Part of this has to do with the how can we install more solar without driving ITEC crazy. ITEC will certainly be a huge part of any program that goes forward, but if you want to achieve a goal of 300 megawatts, by 2025 or whatever date you want to pick, it's some of these big goals that have been kicked around. They're possible, but it's going to require more product that comes from out of state to do it, and so we want to open that up as well. I didn't say anything about Jake Fye's bill. I didn't say anything about Jake Fye's bill. I just said the bill that we're proposing would have a 10-year period. It's very similar to the bill that's coming out of the Representative Fye's process. They also have a fixed term for every participant and also steps down. But they're using a different benchmark for capping the funding that's spent. They're using capacity. Once you reach a certain level of installed capacity, then the incentive drops. Our bill just has calendar dates. There are a couple of reasons why we're going that route, but that is one difference. But there are a lot of similarities between the two bills. That's why I say that Representative Fye's bill is going to kind of give us a bit of a foil to be a little crazier with, with the numbers and try to ask for more. But you're going to see all the details quite soon because the session does start next week, and you'll see bills introduced, and we will get that word out as soon as we get our bill back structured in the bill language. Any other questions?
Any more questions?
Got time for one more. All right. Thanks very much.
Okay, we're in the home stretch. We're almost done. So I failed to do a couple things at the beginning of the meeting in interests of time. So we have two new board members I'd like to introduce. We have Julie Wilcox sitting right up here. Julie, if you could stand up so people know your face. Thank you. Julie is currently an instructor at Charlene Community College for the Clean Tech program, and that's actually the program that myself and Wendy went through, and I think a couple other people in this group. And we also have Dave Watterson sitting right here. Dave, if you could stand up. Thank you. Dave is a homeowner coming from far north, is that right? South, okay, far south. Thurston County, okay, who a couple years ago got a fairly large solar installation installed in his house and is now looking to kind of further the goals of solar in Washington State. So I should also mention that after this, we're all going to be going to Finney Market Pub, or at least a good chunk of us are going to be going to Finney Market Pub, because that's where all the conversation generated by this event happens. So if you can make it out, that'd be great. And I'd also like to thank our sponsors and members. Things like the incentive, or things like the survey we did recently, we really couldn't do this kind of stuff without help. So we really appreciate it, and just wanted to openly say thank you. So I believe you all have a copy of that survey now. I believe it was Phil Liu was saying that they had about 74 registered installers in the state, and we were only able to dig up 50, I think it's 54 installers when we did the survey, plus some other industry folk. And so we got a 35% response rate, and then we extrapolated that data into what you see in front of you. And so what it basically breaks down to is that for every dollar that the state puts into solar, about $2.50 are generated in revenue. So payroll revenue, business income, that sort of thing. That number could jump significantly if we don't extend the sales tax exemption, for instance, but it's still a very good sign. And so this is the first time this has kind of seen the light of day outside of our office, and so we're going to start doing releases to whoever should get a release for this, basically, in the next couple of days, but we wanted you guys to see it first. So in the future, also, if you have any ideas for how we can be more effective, or anything like this survey that we should try, or anything like that, just feel free to email us and let us know. We're really interested in hearing your thoughts. And so I figured I'd give a real quick Q&A if you have any questions about the survey that we conducted. So, or it looks like a lot of you are busy reading. What do you got, Bob?
Yeah, I think we should have included, because they're going to be interested, I feel, the number of residents in commercials separately that are actually installed.
Sure.
And the statistics you showed me earlier from 2005 showed a dramatic increase, and I think that would be impressive to the representative and senators to say, wow, we've actually grown that fast.
Sure.
And then we'll say, look, it was almost double last year. If this continues, because you've given us the incentive, that will create a lot more jobs and be positive to the public and the residents to reelect them.
Okay, no, good idea. Thank you. I saw a hand in the midline back.
The other thing I was thinking that we don't document all the time is increased property value, because they don't reassess your property based on the solar, but when the house sells, it's going to sell for more.
Good point, Chris. Actually, one of the things I should mention is one of the things we've just started to look into as an organization, and again, we probably need some help to figure this out, because the working board is, fairly strapped, but about time we can spend. I did recently find out that there is a federal organization that will certify a class for appraisers who want to become certified in appraising the value of solar on a home. And so, boy, I always forget the name of these guys. One of the big training outfits out in Colorado that I went to, that I now can't remember the name of. Thank you, SEI, there we go. SEI is actually willing to create a class for us if we can do the application process at the federal level for their class to be, to essentially train home appraisers in how to value solar. So that is one of the programs we're doing that we could use help with. So I saw another hand in the back.
I was just curious if you have plans to distribute this to the people who participated in the governor's executive order solar stakeholders group.
Yes, and we're also giving a copy to SIW, so I'm assuming that'll help distribute. But yeah, this is an open document. This is going to be an open document.
quick question. If WSU has been helpful in trying to figure out a way to link solar installation and farm, better farm practices, because I've seen in some other states there's actually a significant linkage between the rural farms and the the agricultural interests and utilization of solar, and I was wondering if that might be a good political thing for the Eastern Washington legislators.
It certainly would be. It hadn't occurred to us, so we haven't asked WSU, but I'm sure they'd be helpful. They've been helpful every other time I've contacted them. It's a good idea. Any other questions? Okay, going once, going twice, and I think we're all done. So thanks a lot for coming out, folks, and if you have any questions or you have any more input for us, please email us.